Are there certain people in this community that are afraid to report on Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively?
Ryan, I would say, in my opinion, is plausibly the most guilty party of this entire.
Blake Lively is throwing fits, while Ryan Reynolds made a reckless decision, using barely any of his better judgment. If we're being honest, that's probably all he has to work with. His impulsive actions are only making things worse as he attempts to silence critics, revealing nothing but his own hypocrisy in the process.
That it was Ryan who had called this shot, that it was very obvious now that we know his brand of narcissism. I feel like we all deserve like PhDs in psychology by the end of this.
Instead of staying quiet like a decent celebrity husband, Ryan Reynolds decided he just had to dive right into the mess like a real genius. Fans expected him to either post a lighthearted joke or stand silently behind Blake while she took the heat. But nope, he grabbed a bucket of gasoline and said, "Here, babe, let's make it a bonfire."
Thesis is essentially that Ryan is actually such a good guy that he kind of had to be a bad guy.
Now, thanks to his brilliant decision-making, content creators, streamers, and even legal experts are either too afraid to speak out or bending over backward to act like nothing's happening. If silence were a sport, half of Law 2 would be winning gold medals right now. And trust me, this disaster is just getting started.
Which is crazy is that a lot of Law 2 is actually conservative. They are actually Republican.
Speaking of disasters, let's talk about how Ryan Reynolds, the man who made a career out of playing a sarcastic superhero, just earned himself a new title, Blake Lively's co-conspirator. Sounds pretty dramatic, right? Like he's starring in a real-life crime thriller. But no, this isn't another Netflix movie. It's just the latest chapter in his real-life PR disaster.
Mr. Reynolds was a key player in the scheme, defaming Justin around Hollywood, strong-arming WME, their agency, into dropping Justin as a client and trying to destroy Justin's career however possible.
In April 2025, Justin Baldwin's lawyers filed official papers designating Ryan Reynolds as a co-conspirator. That's right, not just some guy standing by his wife, but allegedly right there, holding the matches and helping to burn the place down. The drama is getting real, and it looks like Reynolds is in the thick of it.
Ryan Reynolds says Justin Baldoni can't sue him over hurt feelings.
And what did sweet, lovable Ryan do to earn this promotion? According to court documents, he allegedly called Justin Baldwin a sexual predator, not once, but twice, during meetings with the big bosses at WME, which happens to be Baldwin's and Wayfarer's talent agency. I mean, who does that? It's one thing to get caught in a PR mess, but this is a whole different level of drama.
Basically, it's fine if I called him a predator if I believe. It's fine. And the problem is, it's like, okay, so you're admitting then, essentially, that you have called him this.
You walk into a room full of executives and casually start tossing out accusations like you're ordering coffee. Well, guess what, genius? Defamation isn't protected just because you think you're being a supportive husband. Anti-SLAP laws? Yeah, they tried that. Baldwin's team basically laughed in their faces, arguing that what Reynolds did wasn't a matter of free speech. It was a direct attack on someone's business and reputation. And that's not something you can just shrug off.
Yesterday, Ryan Reynolds filed a motion to dismiss. He wants to get out of Justin Baldoni's lawsuit in a filing that was riddled with character attacks and claimed that he can't sue over hurt feelings.
And even if, by some miracle, the court decides to let Ryan off the hook, he's not getting his lawyer bills paid either. That's right. Under New York and California law, Reynolds isn't walking away with a penny. So congratulations, Ryan. Not only did you stick your nose where it didn't belong, but now you're also possibly on the hook for a mountain of legal fees, all for the privilege of being Blake's emotional support punching bag. What a win!
However, his attorney Brian Friedman has given some quotes to the press, and they were pretty scathing. I mean, you gotta admit, the guy goes hard for his client.
Oh, and let's not forget one of Ryan's smartest moves yet. During a press tour for Deadpool and Wolverine last summer, he joked, "I crush my enemies and drink their blood." Real classy, real funny, real great timing, buddy. Because now, Baldwin's lawyers are gleefully dragging that little gem into court as evidence that maybe, just maybe, Ryan Reynolds isn't exactly the innocent little cinnamon roll his PR team paints him to be. Shocking, right? The man who built an entire career on sarcastic violence might actually be sarcastically violent.
I feel like no one cares about politics. We're all kind of united to talk about justice for Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and everyone involved. But what I noticed, which is crazy, is that a lot of LawTube is actually conservative.
While Ryan was out there acting like the world's worst husband, Blake Lively was busy running her own PR circus, and let me tell you, it was an absolute train wreck. Blake's team thought they could weaponize the lawsuit to turn her into some tragic, wronged heroine, but court documents didn't quite see it that way. They even referred to her whole stunt as a sinister campaign. Very on brand for someone whose idea of good PR is throwing sugar at problems and hoping no one notices the arsenic underneath.
Now here Friedman is quoted in TMZ. Let's look at what he said. Mr. Reynolds' exploitation of his enormous power in Hollywood continues, this time arrogantly asking to be dismissed from the case despite his publicly documented involvement, extending far beyond just being a supportive spouse.
And if you thought the behind-the-scenes stuff was bad, just wait for the public disasters. Let's start with the donut shop scandal. Yes, you heard that right. Blake Lively, multi-millionaire actress, showed up at a donut shop and decided that food safety laws just didn't apply to her.
All you need to know who is right and who's wrong is the accused is on vacation. The accuser is selling donuts, trying to buy good karma. Why? Why are you doing so much to try to convince us you're a good person?
She refused to wear a hairnet because apparently when you're Blake Lively, your hair is too famous to be covered up, even if you're leaning over other people's food. Federal food safety regulations, those are for peasants, not for someone as high profile as her.
Getting this donut place in trouble.
Yeah, anybody who doesn't use the internet over the donuts is a red flag city. I agree.
But it gets better. When people called her out, did Blake apologize like a normal human being? Of course not. Instead, her team decided to throw the donut shop under the bus. They literally blamed the owner for not telling Blake what to do. Because when you're a Hollywood princess, it's always someone else's fault that you're acting like an entitled mess. Poor donut shop. 1 minute, they're handing out sprinkles, and the next, they're getting bulldozed by Blake's lawyers because she couldn't be bothered to follow basic hygiene rules.
It's not Blake's job to make sure she's wearing a hairnet. It's the donut shop's owner's job to make sure they tell Blake to wear it. I'm like, wait, are you throwing the donut shop under the bus? You just left it.
Yeah.
And guess what? The public noticed. The same public that once adored Blake as America's sweetheart suddenly had a front row seat to her being reckless, selfish, and honestly just gross. Her image, once polished to a blinding shine, is now looking more like a cracked mirror in a gas station bathroom. And no, Blake, throwing your hair around and flashing a smile over a tray of donuts isn't going to fix it.
By the numbers, and you, Blake, you're the accused, and you're fighting for your life in these streets. You're trying to convince me you're a good person by throwing your blonde hair over some donuts.
Meanwhile, back at the PR headquarters, probably a room full of interns crying into their laptops, Blake's team is desperately trying to spin all of this as empowerment or a misunderstanding. Honey, no one's buying it. Not when your idea of taking responsibility is blaming a small business for your own stupidity. And Ryan? He's just standing there, making things worse, mouthing off about crushing enemies, and thinking he's still the lovable funny guy from those Mint Mobile ads or Deadpool. But guess what? Nobody's laughing anymore.
But Brian Freeman says Reynolds trying to skate is laughable because his fingerprints have been all over the smear campaign against Justin and the Wayfarer team since day one.
You're not the charming rogue anymore. You're the guy who couldn't stay out of his wife's mess and made it 10 times worse. If you thought the circus couldn't get any wilder, welcome to the part where all the so-called brave lawyers and media warriors suddenly found their spines missing. Remember LawTube? Those legal YouTubers who spent months dissecting every piece of the Depp versus Heard drama like their lives depended on it? Yeah, them. Where are they now? Nowhere. Silent. Crickets. It's almost like they collectively decided to pretend the Blake and Ryan disaster doesn't even exist. Strange, right?
This has deep roots into Hollywood, into the media, things that a lot of conservatives say they want to overturn.
Well, it's not that strange once you find out some of these big LawTubers are actually personally followed by Ryan Reynolds. Others? Oh, they just happen to share the same Hollywood agencies as him. Small detail, right? Wouldn't want to upset Daddy Deadpool, right? God forbid they lose a blue checkmark or an invite to some lame Netflix party. Suddenly, all that tough talk about standing up to Hollywood corruption goes straight out the window when it's their buddy Ryan Reynolds in the hot seat. The irony could not be more painful. These are the same people who dragged Amber Heard through the mud for months, but can't even whisper a word about Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds playing dirty.
All hell broke loose. She claims he sexual harassed her, and then by the time they premiered the movie, they weren't even speaking to each other. She made him stay in the basement, and Ryan Reynolds turned on him too. And then she claimed that he unleashed a bad PR campaign against her.
And let's be real, this lawsuit could tear the whole rotten foundation of Hollywood apart. We're talking WME, one of the biggest talent agencies, and Ari Emanuel himself, the same guy who basically controls half of the industry. This isn't just two actors throwing wine at each other. This is pulling back the curtain on how the entire disgusting system works. But sure, law too, sit there quietly. Maybe if you close your eyes and click your heels, your hypocrisy will just disappear.
He adds, after lighting a match, Mr. Reynolds now seeks to run from the flames. It won't work.
Meanwhile, the only people brave enough to call it like it is aren't even lawyers. It's conservative media figures like Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly. Now love them or hate them, at least they're not acting like scared little kids hiding under the bed. They're out there asking the real questions, while the people who should be leading the charge are too busy licking Ryan's boots. Embarrassing.
Hollywood power couple Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and actor and director Justin Baldoni. The plot of this lawsuit is actually more interesting, I believe, than the film that they made.
But the cowardice doesn't stop there. Oh no, it gets so much better. Let's talk about how streaming platforms, the ones that will greenlight any trashy true crime documentary if it gets clicks, are suddenly too scared to touch anything that tells the truth about this lawsuit. Funny how they'll air anything sensational, but when it comes to exposing real messy Hollywood drama, silence.
I do think that there is a lot of fear of speaking on Ryan Reynolds, especially for some smaller creators. So I really do admire some of the
independent filmmakers working on exposing the Blake and Ryan saga came forward and said, streamers flat out refuse to buy documentaries unless they're balanced. And by balanced, they mean sanitized, whitewashed, sugar-coated. Anything to make sure no one says anything bad about Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds. So much for telling the real story, huh? It's all about keeping those shiny reputations intact, no matter the cost.
Ryan, I would say, in my opinion, is plausibly the most guilty party of this entire thing, okay? He has just been publicly humiliating Justin Baldoni. That it was Ryan who had called this shot, that it was very obvious now that we know his brand of narcissism. I feel like we all deserve like PhDs in psychology by the end of this.